Hello, welcome to the Yorkshire Academy of American Football podcast, number 6. Today we're featuring Phoebe Schecter, and we've been talking to Phoebe for quite a while, trying to arrange this. She's very busy, so we're really pleased to have her with us. Phoebe's the first of 3 females to receive an internship with the NFL, and she spent almost 2 years with the Buffalo Bills. She's also captain of the Great Britain Lions women's team. And she led them to bronze in the recent European Women's Championships in Leeds, which the Academy were very privileged to help host. She's the under-19s Great Britain coach at linebacker position. She's chair of diversity and inclusion with BAFA, the athlete representative with IFAF, and she's the managing director of UK Dukes, and I'm hoping to find out a bit more about UK Dukes and the work that they do in spreading the football message. And finally, she's also captained the England women's kabaddi team, which I'm also hoping to have a chat with her about, because that was fun following that. I've been watching that online for a while. So yeah, let's have a chat to Phoebe. Hello, Phoebe.
Hello, how are you?
I'm grand. How are you? How are you coping? How's everything going over there?
Yeah, it's been all right, actually. I've managed to stay quite busy. Been able to tune into a lot of kind of webinars and podcasts, and my garden is a disaster, so I finally am giving it a little bit of TLC. How about you?
It's almost exactly the same. I'm just spending most of my time I've put my business into hibernation now, so we're going a little bit stir crazy in the house, the 3 of us. We've got my wife Belinda and Miles, who you know from Great Britain under-19s, and we're managing to stay sane just about.
You're doing very well.
Absolutely. But listen, thanks for joining us today. It's a real pleasure having you on, Phoebe. First superstar, I suppose we could say.
Well, I appreciate being on. It's really exciting what you guys are doing over at the Academy, and doing things like this are brilliant to just kind of keep spreading word of the sport.
Absolutely. Well, let's find out more about you then, Phoebe. So your early years, what's with the accent? You're a Great Britain captain, and you've represented Great Britain and England. And yet we hear that the American tone. So tell us a bit about your history and where you're from and your dual nationality.
Sure, yeah. I mean, I do keep trying to get rid of the accent, but it won't leave me. My mom's accent is, she's kind of from Stoke area originally, but she's lived in the States now 25 years. I mean, her accent is like the Queen's English now. I don't know where she's found it, but I'm like around all her friends. She's like, oh, I'm so posh. Yeah, so I grew up in the States, a state specifically called Connecticut. Most people don't know where that is unless you watch Amityville Horror or Gilmore Girls, but not far north of New York City, probably like an hour's drive, really. But always worked with horses my whole life. That's always been my passion. I had a really great job over in the States, and about 7 years ago now, I moved over to the UK to work for a gentleman on the Dutch Olympic team for 3-day eventing. So all horses, basically. And literally just picked up and left my life over there and got involved in horses. My mom's side of the family, so I've got like a gran and auntie and uncle who live over here. So it's still, you know, I feel comfortable here. And yeah, just kind of was looking for a way to meet people, essentially. I was on my own at the time. Horses over here, it's 6 days a week, pretty full on hours. So I was looking for a way to kind of just make some friends and get a bit of American culture. And I just happened to one day be on Facebook and saw an ad for American football trials in Manchester. And I went for it. I think when you're out of your comfort zone, you're much more willing to take risks. And for me, that's what happened. So went to the trial day, had no idea what I was doing whatsoever. And luckily made the team somehow. really, it was really great because I met a lot of really good friends on that day, a bunch of them who I'm still really good friends with. One in particular, Bev Marwood. She is, she was the GB captain before she amazingly handed it over. But Bev was actually the one who said, you know what, look, they're doing GB trials. Back then we were working from kind of a top-down approach because women's American football was still in its infancy. There were only about 3 teams at the time. So Jim Messenger was the head coach, but also in charge of women's development in the UK. So came down to trial, don't know how, but made the team. I think because of my accent, I got put at quarterback. So just as a note to any coaches out there, if your player is American, that does not mean that they can throw. But I was like the best worst of the situation. So
you were
luckily
really good at handing the ball off, were you?
Yeah, exactly. And I was really good if someone was coming to try and sack me, to drop a shoulder. Yeah. But luckily Joe Kilby came in finally and took me out of my pain and misery. And luckily I had an affinity for contact, so ended up at linebacker. And really that has just kind of grown and grown and grown ever since that day, magically 6 years ago.
I know, and to make that shift from, and you're exactly right about the American accent, to make that shift then from quarterback to linebacker, but then to excel at that position, do you think that the fact that you grew up in North America, immersed in a culture that had football at the heart of it, and from a sporting point of view, was there some sort of osmosis that meant that you always had that in you to be able to excel at the sport?
To be completely honest, I never watched American football. I watched literally 2 Super Bowls my entire life before moving to the UK. So, you know, for me, I never really found the interest in it. It's probably a lot like most Brits today. They think it's too start and stop. There's a lot of people. I didn't really understand the, you know, game within the game of it. But actually, I wish that I had the sport of American football when I was a kid, because I've never played a contact sport before. And actually, the way that playing a contact sport makes me feel, and I'm sure for most people feel, is, you know, the way that it empowers you and it gives you confidence. I wish I had that when I was a kid. And I wish that I, you know, can go back and relive my life just with having that team mentality. I've played team sports before, but there's no sport like American football. There's no situation that, you know, the way that you are off the field, the person you are off the field, how that reflects who you are or how that is reflected to who you are on the field. I mean, this sport teaches you so much about life, and I just wish that growing up I had that. And that's, I think, why I'm also so passionate about trying to spread the game to any and everybody, just because it's just incredible.
It's a common thread I've found speaking to a lot of people within the sport, the fact that they see the link between the sport itself and excelling at life and actually pushing that forward. So that does seem to be quite a common thread, Phoebe. It's something you picked up on more. So I don't, maybe just from a personal point of view, the equestrianism side of things. I grew up on a farm and was surrounded by horses and cattle and various other things. But the equestrianism, they tend to breed quite tough people. Those people that ride the horses, aren't they? They're pretty no nonsense.
Definitely, and it's been a huge part of my development. I think in terms of, I was really quite young when I adopted my pony, who I still have today. She was a rescue, so I adopted her, and I think the way that it teaches you responsibility. But I've been riding since I was 4 years old, and they have this saying where you're not a true rider till you fall off at least 10 times. I mean, I could probably, I can't even think of how many times I've fallen off a horse, or, you know, the injuries I've gotten. I've broken my elbow, I've done this, I've been kicked in the stomach. I mean, all these things that have happened over the years. And for me, the greatest lesson, as cliche as it is when you fall down, you get right back on again. And that has been a huge part of really molding who I am, and having to care for an animal that completely relies on you. It's just been a huge part of my life. And I think along with that, you know, a lot of my friends and who I lived with when I was younger had boys who were really big into dirt biking, or they were, you know, always outside. And I kind of was brought up surrounded by these really, you know, great outdoorsy guys who I just kind of fit in with them probably more than anything else. And that became my real core group.
Yeah, very, very similar there. I also grew up riding dirt bikes, and so yeah, it's quite a lot of crossover there. So the reason I was asking about that and the toughness that comes with equestrianism, did that then? Do you think that gave you an advantage? And you mentioned earlier not minding dropping the shoulder, then going into, you know, almost without even thinking, just being able to go into a big collision with somebody on your first ever training session, maybe your second ever training session, and being able to rub it off and just go, okay, well, I'm fine, I can carry on now. Was that something?
I think so. I mean, you're working with, you know, a couple 100,000-pound animals all the time, and you're used to kind of nudging them over, or, you know, any sort of movements like that. You have to carry lots of heavy things. I think probably also just being real, you know, growing up wasn't the best time of my life. And I wish that I had the sport, because it would have been a really good outlet. So I think that kind of carries on. If you've got a place to kind of, you know, put all your aggression, it's a really great situation, which is probably why I found linebacker such a perfect position for me, because it's all about, you know, see ball, get ball. And it's complete meditation for me. You don't think about anything else. You just focus on what's in front of you, what your role is, and whilst doing that, knowing what everyone else is doing around you. It's just such a special sport.
So then take us through, you've been introduced to the sport, you're playing at Manchester. So take us through the progression then, which hopefully will lead us through to making it to GB. So tell us about that period.
Sure. So the team started up in Manchester, and then we kept doing trials for GB. Alongside this, I was still working obviously full time with horses. So my boss was pretty good at the time, allowing me to kind of have Saturdays as my one day off, because we kind of made a decision back then that Saturdays would be for women's football, because Sundays were for rugby for the most part. And that's really why we still play women's football on Saturdays, is this group of 12 of us really made that decision. So I was able to kind of go through that. And then it came down to, once I realized I wouldn't be at quarterback, Coach Messenger said to me, look, you're going to need to find a new position if you're going to want to make the team and make it for games. And that's really when the linebacker scenario happened. And we had our first game in October of 2013, I think it is. And that was against Sweden. It was just 5-on-5. I mean, I didn't even own my own boots. I had those old school like hip pads sticking out of my clothes. I was borrowing people's gloves. I mean, it was just a mess, and I had no idea what we were doing. But we managed to win, and that really kind of threw us into this spiral of success, because we did the 5s game, and then we went straight into 11s against Sweden the following year. And before we knew it, now we had to qualify for Euros. So we had to do a Euro qualifier against Russia. We won that, and then straight into Euros, like the actual Euros. And that's where we came second, losing to Finland, who at the time completely were a better team than us. They just knew more football than we knew. But actually, as a team, and something I'll always remember is, you know, we had our last game, and it was, I mean, it took it out of all of us. We were giving everything we could. And at the end, they were doing all the award ceremonies and everything. And all the other teams were over celebrating with us. And Finland was kind of on their own, you know, in their own little inner circle. But everyone was so excited for us, because we had been the underdogs, and how we kind of made it through and got as far as we did, because no one expected anything of us. And I think that really set the tone for what we wanted to achieve going forwards. After that, we were able to go to Worlds, and then obviously, lastly, in the amazing Leeds, we had our Euros.
Yeah, I wanted to, without for fear of bringing back the memory too much, because maybe it's still a little bit raw. And I can remember being at the games and being super stoked and watching the performances, which were absolutely amazing by the Great Britain women. It was just, I was blown away by the standard of all the teams.
Thank you.
And you got through so exciting. It looked like you're just on the verge of getting that gold medal and being the European Championships. And talk us through how those last few minutes of that game, the last game, which meant you dropped, instead of being champions with that score that they got, you dropped back down to third, and the heartbreaks. Tell us a little bit about that story.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing was, we had a game plan going into that whole camp, knowing what we wanted. And I think there were probably times that we needed to be realistic with what we needed to achieve. And you'll have this with most teams that travel or most GB situations. You want to get everyone on the field for starters, because we're still in a sport where it's a pay to play. Doesn't matter if you're at the national level or domestic level. And for us, you know, we knew what we wanted. The game against Sweden was definitely a tough one. They were miles better than they have been in ages. Our coaches did a great job game planning for us. I just think we probably had some scenarios really across all three games. It didn't necessarily come down to that last game. What it came down to were, you know, when we were on our own goal line, we can't punch it in. And for us as a team, that's you know, not a great place to be for any team, especially when we had probably the biggest O-line there. So for us, you know, you learn a lot more from the losses than you do from the wins. And there's a lot that we have to learn, and it probably put us back in our place a little bit. Being completely honest, we still thought that we had came in second, and it wasn't until that last second switch where the numbers, which are still confusing. Yeah, I would definitely check with that one. But where the numbers were whatever they were, so it put us down into third place. You know, I think that was really heartbreaking for a lot of people, because it was a huge opportunity for us to be in front of the British fans, and you guys were amazing. I mean, we could not have asked for a more supportive, incredible, rambunctious group of people. And for all of us to be able to be on our home turf and look up and see you guys was just incredible. For people to see their friends and families was, you know, something so special. I know everyone will carry home, and the support we got across the nation's been huge. And we wanted to do our best for you. We wanted to put on the best American football games that you could watch. And, you know, it wasn't that we were female or male. It was just that we wanted to entertain you guys and show you what we've been working on for all this time. So I think the heartbreak was, one, that we didn't get the place we thought we would. We should have won that whole thing, and that comes down to us at the end of the day. And that comes to how we, you know, even in the Austria game, if we had beat them by X more points, that would have given us that opportunity. Or if we kicked it instead of going for two, do you know, there's so many little things that happen up that to lead us to that point. I think all of that, especially for myself, really kind of puts the weight on your shoulders. And I just think that actually going forwards, we're going to take a big look at the program and, again, just see what can we do going better. And if I'm being totally honest, one of the biggest things that we have to work on as a sport, not just females, we need to be putting all of our energy into the younger generation. There are no pathway programs for, you know, under 18s for women, or for a lot of these young guys. It's great we've got under 19s, but we need to start building it up from the bottom now. And the other thing is, you know, working on football IQ. We've kind of rushed ahead for a lot, trying to get kids up to scratch to get them in a game. But now we need to work on the why. Why is this? Why are you doing this? And if as a player you don't know what you're doing and why you're doing it, well, that's not going to stick, and that's not going to help us long run. I can put you in a game and say, this is what they run, and you, if they do this, you run and hit them, but I need to know why. And that's something I think as a nation we really need to put our energy into.
Absolutely, and definitely with the current generation of kids that are coming through now, actually being in a position to be able to explain to them why is super important. And by the way, just going back to you were on about the quality of the games there. All the games are still available on YouTube. Go and watch the games from those. From the standard was absolutely out of this world. It was brilliant, and I was filling up while you were saying that. Then,
Oh, thank you.
The lack of partisanship, I think, on the days, on the match days at the EWCs, was incredible, and that was indicated right at the end, where all the teams were being brought out and given the medals, and nobody was sad. Or, well, of course, people were sad, but nobody was like, "Oh, that should have been us." They were genuinely celebrating the winners, the runners-up, the third-place team. It didn't matter. Everybody was there to just, have a great time. So that was wonderful to see. But back to the point you were making about the development of the kids, that's definitely true. And is that something that, as a Great Britain coach now, you're deeply conscious of, getting that message across and explaining it as well as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully my guys will tell you this. We've been doing our classroom sessions online, obviously, as we're not able to be together. And I want them to draw everything. I want them to know what gaps and techniques are. I need them to understand why we're doing something. Why do you run a certain defense? Well, as a player, if you can't tell me, how is that us as coaches doing the best we can for our kids? And in order to really grow our coaching pool down the line as well, we need these kids to understand, but be passionate about the sport. And I think it's our responsibility as coaches to give them the best experience, because I'd imagine if you ask most coaches that are out there today, and it doesn't matter what sport they're in, they probably got involved in coaching because they had a really great coach who got them really excited about their sport. And that's our responsibility. And I want to make sure that, at the end of this, that I'm helping my under 19s kids as much as possible. And I hope that we have some form of retention scheme for them should they not go on to play, students or seniors. Well, I want to make sure that I get these guys in and they're doing some sort of GA work or shadowing in somewhere. And I think, something that like Yorkshire Academy does that's great is you guys have a pipeline of kids coming through as players and then bringing them back in to assist. I mean, that's huge, and you're building their confidence and they don't even realize it.
Yeah, for sure. It's by stealth, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Yeah. And listen, I could stay on this for another half an hour talking to this kid, and we might do a part 2, Phoebe, so watch this space.
I'm sorry I talk so much.
No, please. It's brilliant. This is great stuff. I wanted to talk to you now about your work with the NFL and your Buffalo Bills coaching internship. Please tell us a little bit about how that came about, what the experience was like, and people like yourself and Dr. Jen laying the way for other women and people of diverse backgrounds coming through into coaching. So please tell us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so kind of scrolling all the way back, the first internship I've ever done, not even with the Bills, was based off of someone overhearing me do a talk at a BAFTA convention. That is literally how my first one came about. And that was with Laverne, with Oscar Rodriguez and Rich Wurzel. And then off of that, that's what gave me the bug. And I would recommend to any coach out there who is thinking they want to take their coaching to the next level, try and get to the States, do a couple weeks, whether spring ball, some form of training camp, whatever, and just see if it's what you like. And if you think at the end of that, oh my gosh, I want more of this, then I totally encourage you to keep going for it. I just think we all need to kind of do our best to get out there, get as much experience, and make a very well thought out decision on, is this what I want to do? But for me, I felt that within that I really wanted to do it. And so we have something in women's American football called the Women's World Football Games. And essentially it's just an event that happens once a year. And it's really exciting because females from across the globe, literally, I think we had 24 countries at the last one, all come together and play football. And it really works on the fact that football is a language in its own and that we were all speaking it. But they started doing something called the NFL Careers Forum for women. And it was a really great way to have these incredible speakers. So, assistant GM Scott Pioli, owner of the Bills, Kim Pegula, we had Dean Blandino from officiating. We had all these incredible people come in and first off tell us about what their job is, because there's so many jobs out there and within an American football team that we have no idea about. And I surely didn't. And also be real with us about what are the demands of a role, working for a team or working to whatever level they may be at. And off the back of that, I was kind of told about this thing called the Bill Walsh Diversity Fellowship. And essentially what that is a opportunity for minorities. So essentially, if you're not from the US and you're not a white male, being honest, then you've got an opportunity to apply for this, where you choose 5 teams and hope that one of them chooses you. Yeah. You have to do interviews for it, send in videos, do a coaching CV, all things that I'd never done before. And so I did that. I basically had heard back from 3 of the teams, and I was obviously a no, and was still talking with Scott Pioli from the Falcons and hadn't really heard from the Bills yet. And I was finishing probably one of my last meetings with Scott, who luckily is my mentor now, because I think if I tell him no to the Falcons one more time, he's going to kill me. But I got out of the meeting with him and had emails from Sean McDermott from the Bills saying, can you please call me? And gave him a ring, and he said, are you speaking with anybody else from, within the league? And I was very transparent. I wanted to be honest. And I said, yes, I'm speaking with Scott over at the Falcons. And he said, well, tell Scott thank you, but you're going to be a Bill now. And for me, I was like, oh, I mean, that was it. That totally sold it for me. And by far, go with gut decision, whatever you want to call it. It is the best decision I ever made in my life. And started training camp that following year, so 2017, and I was with defensive backs to start off with. So for me, that was home. Defense, loved it, tackling, all of that. And had a really great coach then that I was with called Gil Bird. He's been in the league for a few years. His son's been in the league. Really incredible guy to learn from. And again, someone I'm still really close with, which is amazing. And, my first time there, it was definitely overwhelming. I had no idea what I was doing. I think you can't even get an idea of what the speed is at which they move in terms of practices and everything like that. But also the terminology for me was so foreign that I couldn't even ask a question because I didn't know what they were saying. And so what I had to do was kind of create my own glossary, and I had to do my own research. I tried sitting in as many meetings as possible, which I was fortunate enough to be able to do. Leading up to it, I had printed out pictures of all the coaches so that when I got there, I knew what everyone looked like already, and I got their names down, and I knew their backgrounds. I mean, I did everything possible to put my best foot forward, which was brilliant because at the end of training camp, even though I wasn't at a level for the NFL yet, I got a call, or an email, I should say, when I was on the plane back to the UK, if I would go and do an internship out at Bryant University, which is on the East Coast. It's a Division I team, and go out there and be an offensive assistant for the season. For me, that was huge because I got my flight from Buffalo, landed. We had our flag European Championships in Copenhagen. I think flew out to there and then flew right back to Rhode Island from Copenhagen, and started this crazy experience where I lived in my head coach's basement. They call it 500 Bulldog bucks, but essentially it's $500 that go towards a meal plan. Wow. And, for me, first off, I eat a lot more than $500 for a season. but I would run to work. I mean, all these different things, and it's free labor, but I learned so much about kind of building up my story in terms of, I don't want to ever feel like I didn't earn my place to get to the NFL. And by, doing all the grunt work and actually learning the ins and outs and the whys, it's been huge for me. My head coach then is now the head coach of Brown University. I mean, he's amazing as well, complete genius in terms of offense. And his brother's one of the Texans receivers coaches, or he is the Texans receivers coach. So even more amazing information coming in. But he really helped me get ready to kind of go into the NFL. And so I'd stayed in contact with the Bills this whole time. And the following year, I got invited back to do training camp. But this time it was with tight ends. So for me, we didn't really have tight ends that much at Bryant, but or I never worked with them, I should say. And when I got to the Bills, I felt much more comfortable because obviously I'd been there before, so I liked the familiarity of it. But my coach, so Rob Boris, he is incredible. He's been with the Rams before he was there. I think some people, the NFL series, which one's that one? It's not
Hard Knocks.
Hard Knocks, yeah. At the end of the Rams one, you see him, Coach Boris, driving to Buffalo, and he starts his job there. And that was, all I knew of him. He's a very hard worker, always kept to himself. So I didn't know much. And when I got to training camp, he was like, just so you know, you are my first intern I've ever had in my 14 years in the league. Yeah. So I already knew, oh my gosh, the bar can be set anywhere at this point because I'm the only experienced, but he's had to do all this for himself this whole time. So getting him to kind of hand over the reins a little bit is going to be interesting. And it's been brilliant. I made it through training camp, loved learning from him. And Coach McDermott asked if I would be interested in staying on for the whole season. And that, I mean, there's no feeling like that. And there was no ever role like that. So I obviously said yes, but ended up kind of creating my own role. So yes, I was Rob's assistant coach for the tight ends, but also offensive assistant. I would help defense with their stuff, sitting on all their meetings, and then special teams, whether it was scout team, drawing cards, whatever it is they needed. I was really able to dive into all three parts of American football for me, which was unbelievable and the greatest learning experience I could ever ask for.
Plus, it was just down the road from where you grew up, so a bit of a bonus as well.
Yeah, casual 8-hour drive.
In terms, it's not far, it's just down the road.
Yeah, exactly. I was close to Niagara Falls, so that was fun. If you ever get to go, if you're ever not working.
If you ever want to go on honeymoon, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, the Buffalo Bills thing all went through, and we've covered off the Great Britain stuff. The most exciting bit for me, really, now is the UK Dukes, and yourself and it's Kenny, isn't it, who's working on that? He's a real dynamo.
Yeah.
Like yourself. So it seems like the two of you are well suited. Tell us a little bit about that, please.
Sure. So, Kenny's been involved in Great Britain football. He's older than me, bro. I have to get out there. Everyone thinks he's younger than me, but he's been involved in American football for ages now. And I think we met somewhere down the line. I used to volunteer all the time for when the NFL teams are over. So I would do a lot with that, especially because Wayne Hill was involved back then with organizing it a lot of times. And so we met, actually, he'd been working at the NFL office before I started there, down in London, and then I started, and that's really how we truly met. And we'd be going around and going to schools, and half the time people just didn't know what to do with a football. And, you give it to a kid and they just kind of kick it or don't know what is this thing? So eventually Kenny had the UK Dukes, and he asked me if I'd want to come on board. And it's something that I'm so passionate about, and he is as well, because both of us have had so many opportunities through the sport of American football that we just want to give back and we want to share that with others. So essentially what we're doing now is trying to help grow the game outside of the US. And whether that's by his amazing trick videos, or we go around to different teams across Europe and in the UK and different universities doing camps, clinics, trying to upskill coaches and players. We've also got a schools program now, which has been fab because it's getting a sustainable way for the sport to grow. And I think, that's, at least for us, kids are the way to do that, and educating them that way. So we've been really, really fortunate to just, have met each other, but also both be driven by the same passion. And it's really exciting, I'm sure, as you would in any team, that you're both pulling in the same direction with the same common goal. So it's been really great for us. And I think we're lucky to do what we love. And I know that, there's a lot of people in the UK and across the world that would love to work in American football and have that be their full-time day job. So we appreciate that. And we know that, we're very, very fortunate.
Well, the great thing that I've noticed about it, and it's one of the four main tenets of the Yorkshire Academy, which is we have respect, compete, grow, and finally enjoy. And that's last for a very important reason. It's the top of the bill. And it looks to me like you guys really do have fun with everything you do with the Dukes. And I think that comes across in the message. Yeah,
definitely. And we want others to have fun. I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you're grassroots or elite. If you aren't having fun and you don't love what you're doing, and then why do it? And I think that is a big driving thing for us. I think we're also very lucky that both of us are BAFCA educators. Kenny's on the BAFA board as well. So there's so many different things that really kind of tie us in and, really just tie us into the UK. And it's great that we get to be able to do what we love and help people fall in love with the sport.
Well, I'll stick something in the description below about how to get in touch with the UK Dukes. But tell us how you're on across all social media.
Yep, we're across all social media. Everything's at the UK Dukes, so you can find us that way. Or if you want to find me, and I'll direct you, whatever I can do to help get you there. If you want to sign your school up for our schools program, go right ahead.
Excellent. Well, listen, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you, Phoebe. Like I say, we could have gone on for yonks, absolutely ages. But thanks for taking the time out to stay with us. I hope your garden is appreciating all this TLC you're giving to it, and I'm sure it's going to look fantastic by the end of the lockdown. You take care, and look forward to seeing you soon, Phoebe. Cheers.
Thanks so much. You too. Bye. Cheers.